Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy McCoy, the marketing manager over at Ongoing Operations, and thanks for joining us this morning. We've got a poll up on the screen if you guys want to go ahead and answer that while I'm just giving a real quick intro. So we've got a great session today with Brad Powell, who's the founder and CEO of Redboard. And so as Brad's discussing how to maintain your credit union's audit program through COVID-19. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the question section of the chat box there, and we'll also have some Q&A at the end. So with that, please grab your latte, your coffee, whatever your morning caffeine pleasure is, and I'll kick it over to Brad to go ahead and start our webinar.
Great. Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. My name is Brad Powell. I'm CEO of Redboard. And, just to start off, I think we're living right now in some extraordinary times. I can't imagine that any of us have experienced anything remotely like this. I know in my 20 years of experience in the credit union industry, I've not seen anything remotely like this. So my goal for today is really just to be able to give you one or two little tidbits or nuggets that can help you weather the storm with regard to your audit program and take something back that will be of benefit to your credit union. So with that, we're going to get started. I'm just going to give you a quick roadmap of where we're going. So our roadmap for today. First, we're going to talk about just three realities of the situation, about what we're experiencing today. Next, I'm going to cover three common frustrations that credit unions are typically experiencing. And then lastly, I'm going to cover three strategies to address those frustrations and help you through this trying time. After that, I'm also going to share some resources about things that we can offer that might be able to help you along the way. So let's dig right in. The realities of the situation. So the first real reality is that audit and compliance, at least for the last 3 or 4 weeks, are, I put on the screen that they're a low priority. I'd almost venture to say no priority. Every credit union I've talked to, our customers, other folks in the industry that we've spoken with, it's just not something that people are focused on. And instead, your credit unions are focused on things that are really important these days, like keeping your branches open, serving your members, making sure that your staff doesn't get COVID-19, making sure that, you're taking care of members when it comes to payment deferrals and what have you. There's been some really trying things, and, the audit and compliance area, while it's still important, just hasn't been a priority, at least for the last month. The next reality to face is that no one knows how long this thing's going to last. If you watch the news, you can look at some models that say, hey, we're about to peak. You say that some models say that it's much longer. Everyone's different. And the answer is nobody knows. So we don't really know how this thing's going to last. And if you listen to folks like Dr. Fauci, even when we go back to quote unquote normal, that new normal, for the meantime at least, is still going to involve social distancing. It's still going to involve restrictions at work and other things. So our return to our relative normal, at least for 2020, probably really isn't going to be that normal. And the last reality is that these audit and compliance activities, they can't be ignored forever. Sure, the last month we've been in super crisis mode, and they have been a low priority and been relatively ignored. I think we all understand that can't be that way forever. In spite of today's circumstances, in some way we need to figure out how to get those programs back on track, because they're crucial and important to our credit unions. So the question that I would ask you to think about as we go through this presentation is really, what are the one or two things that you're going to accomplish or try to do to get this back on track and to keep your program going, and be able to do so in spite of the circumstances you face? The reality is that at least in the near term, that we're not going to be in a normal situation, and yet we still have to keep going somehow. So I'm going to take a break right now and ask Amy to share the poll results.
Sure thing, Brad. So we had about 42% of folks say that for the answer as usual. So how will your credit union's program proceed? As usual, we may work remotely with a few changes. 53% were saying modified. We may cut activities for resources, and 5% saying not at all. We're putting our audit program, on hold.
Okay, that's thank you very much, Amy. And those results they're quite interesting to me. And the reason I say that is that I gave this same poll 2 weeks ago to a similar session to another set of credit unions. And at the time, the poll results looked a little bit differently. At that time, most of the people said that they were going to continue as is with no changes. And that was the majority. And there were actually a sizable chunk that said, we're not going to do it at all. It was almost 20% said that they were going to put the entire program on hiatus. And what I've seen as I've talked to folks over the last couple of weeks is because the situation is changing so rapidly that more and more folks are going into that modified category. The one thing that I would say is that out of those results, the biggest takeaway I would have that I would see is that 95% of the organizations are trying to continue your program in some way, shape, or fashion. So that's, to me, is the big takeaway. So let's jump into some of the meat of this. I'm going to cover a few common frustrations with you. And what these are so from our discussions with credit unions over the years, there's a few things that we see that are pain points and we hear again and again and again. Almost every credit union will tell us at least one of these three things I'm going to share with you, and some of them tend to have all of them. So I want to share with you what these are, so we have sort of a common reference point of where we're starting from. The first frustration is that spreadsheets and emails are a mess. That is by far the #1 most common way that credit unions organize their audit program, organize their compliance and monitoring activities. It's just the nature of the beast. And the problem with that is it just tends to be unorganized, messy, and it contributes to things slipping through the cracks. What this typically, when I see it, what it typically looks like is you have one of your staff members who's busily trying to maintain a bunch of different spreadsheets and trying to keep everything organized, keep them up to date as information comes in, as findings get generated, as activities progress. And they're trying to keep all this tied and organized and produce reports on it. And it just sucks up a huge amount of time and it causes just frustration overall with the team. So that's the first thing that we see is the common frustration is with spreadsheets and emails. The second common frustration is that findings are staying open too long. And what this typically looks like, or the story that I would typically hear is something like this. It's that, when you have one event, so let's say your annual exam, just as an example, when you have one event, you have a few findings that are generated out of that, everything's fine. 3 or 4 findings, we can handle that, no problem. That the problem comes in that is when you have audit activity over a series of months. So you have, an audit, several audits over several months, add on your monitoring and compliance activities. You have all these things building up. Each of these audit events per se will generate findings, and over time, and as these things add up, that's what makes it unmanageable. It makes it credit unions tend to struggle trying to keep track of all of them, and especially as the findings get older, they tend to fall more and more off the radar, and they just tend to pile up, and they just stay open way too long. So that's what that looks like. And then the last frustration that we commonly see is that business units are frustrated. Even in regular times, the business units have their own priorities to address. And in these days, it's even more so. They just don't have time to hunt or peck through someone's complicated spreadsheets or learn someone's new system. They just don't have time to play Where's Waldo with what they need to do and what needs to be done. So if these are the common frustrations, and I would say these are the ones that we have seen even before we had this COVID-19 issue come up. So what does that have to do with what you need to do now? And my answer to you is that when it comes to our current environment where we have remote work, when people are spread out, these problems get worse. They don't get better. These are the problems that most credit unions are already facing in some way, and they get significantly worse when you deal with remote and distant work environments. And I mean, the reason is because the number one way to mitigate these things is to have human interaction. You know, sort of when you can walk around and run into people or see people at lunch or have normal meetings where you're seeing people, sometimes those activities are mitigated. They mitigate these frustrations. They make them not so bad. But when you have a remote work environment where we're all spread out and we're not seeing each other and we don't have that same connection, there's no real mitigation for that. So regardless of whether, you're using, you have internal audits or external audits, exams, or monitoring activities, it just tends to be a problem. So with that in mind, what can be done about it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some strategies, some very specific things that you can take away to try to address those problems and to make your audit program run better and more smoothly in this remote working environment where you're not seeing your colleagues every day, except maybe on video chat or what have you. And just a little bit about where we've come up with these strategies. So these are strategies, the way that we've developed these is we've observed from our own customers. So from our Redboard platform, for our customers, we've observed what's worked for them. So they had those same common frustrations coming in. And we observed what were the techniques that helped them get past those issues. And you may have a question, or you may be thinking, okay, Brad, that's great, but I'm not a customer of Redboard, so what does that have to do with me? And my answer to you is I'm going to share what we're doing internally to help them. So I'm kind of giving away our secret recipe or our special sauce. I'm going to explain to you specifically what we do on our platform that helps address that, so that if you want to, you can implement some of these things on your own. So let's jump into these. First strategy is to centralize your materials. So the idea here, the key thing is you want to create a one-stop shop for both your audit team and your business units to be able to find everything audit related. It shouldn't be a mystery where anything's at. Now, I will tell you, the number one best way to address this is to have some sort of system that manages it for you. Redboard is one of those systems. There are other ones on the market. We're not the only game in town. That typically is going to be your quickest way to overcome this and centralize your materials. But if that's not an option for you for some reason, I'm going to share with you a couple of alternatives that you can implement on your own to help down that path as well. The first thing you can do is you can actually try to create your own central database where you keep track of all this activity. What I've typically seen credit unions do is they've cobbled together tools that they had available to try to create a way to track all this information. I've seen them use tools like SharePoint. Some credit unions have a system called Confluence or Bugzilla, or there's also a software development tool called Jira. There's different tools out there that folks will try to build together and wire together in a way that helps them track this information. So that's one way that you can try to do that. If that's not an option for you, another way is if you need to stick with your spreadsheets, then you could just try to optimize your use of spreadsheets and emails. What this looks like is if you're a smaller organization, instead of having a bunch of spreadsheets spread out all over the place, you could try to create one master spreadsheet that has everything. That's that one-stop shop. If you're larger, have more activities, or have more people involved, that tends to get cumbersome. So in that case, if you need to stick with spreadsheets, then what I would suggest is to create a set of rules that include naming rules about how your spreadsheets are named, rules about where the information is stored, and a set of procedures about how you update those spreadsheets. And again, the idea is to create that one-stop shop so that everybody knows where everything is at and how to find the information, and there's really no ambiguity around it. So that's your goal. So I've given you a couple of different strategies for how to try to address that. So your first one is centralize your materials. Second strategy is to create an accountability system. Now, the key goal here, what we're trying to achieve here, is that as an audit team member, you want to always have confidence that the tasks on your plate will be completed on time and as expected. And that's regardless of whether they're with the audit team or whether they're with the business units. You always want to have confidence that things will be completed on time and as expected. So this accountability system should cover things like due dates, who items are assigned to. It should make sure to cover not just the audit team or the compliance team, but also the business units as well. And it should have things like reminders to tell people when things are due and what have you. If you're building this on your own, what this will typically look like is a set of procedures, really, that you cover usually once a day or at least once a week to go through and make sure that you know with confidence where all of these items are standing, who they're assigned to, and when they're due. One real important key in this step is to make sure that everything is transparent. If it's a mystery to anybody, it just typically won't work. You want to make sure that, in conjunction with having these materials stored centrally, that anything regarding your accountability system is extremely transparent. Nothing should be a mystery to anybody. So that's your second strategy, create an accountability system. The third strategy is to cater to your business units. And this is where really this all comes together as far as how these things work. To me, this is the most important one of the three. And the way to think about this is, in normal times, your business units have their own priorities and they sometimes struggle to give audit the time that you need for them to give it. In today's age, that strain's even bigger. They have to worry about, for example, with the branches, they have to worry about keeping their branches open and how they're going to staff them and how they're going to run their entire operation with just running through the drive-throughs. And, we've had talk with credit unions over the last week that have had to shutter their branches, or a few of them, because a few of their team members were tested positive. There's just a million different things that they're worrying about. So the key is you just need to make it as easy as possible on them. You need to cater to them in a way that takes as much of the burden off of them as possible. In any of these audit activities, whether you're running an outsourced audit or an examination, or you're running internal activities, or whether you're running monitoring and quality control, interaction with your business units is crucial. For most of these activities, it's really, they are a key part of the process. So if you're going to have success running these programs, you need to have their involvement as optimized as possible. So this one is so important. I'm going to dig in just a little bit more detail on a specific few strategies. One, I said this before, keep all your audit materials all in one place. Again, you want to make it as easy as possible. No, they shouldn't be hunting and pecking. It should be extremely obvious to them where they need to go. The second strategy is to report and remind consistently. As I said, they have other priorities on their plate, and the reality is that from an audit perspective, you're not at the top of their list. So it's not that they don't want to help, they just have other things they need to deal with. So you need to give them reminders, friendly reminders, but reminders nonetheless, and reporting to make sure that they understand what needs to be done and when. And the last thing I would say is just to make it as simple as intuitive as possible. Again, just make it so that they don't have to think about it. They can get in, do their work as quickly and efficiently as possible, and get out and move on to what they're doing. So just to give you a quick idea of what that might look like, in whatever you put together. I'm going to show you a screenshot of one of the pages in our Redboard system. And you can see this is tailored to the business units. Like on one page, we have a list of everything that's assigned to someone. And then we also have a page of everything that they're accountable for. So for example, if you're a director or a manager or a VP, everything that's in your organization chain, you could have one place to go see it. So again, the idea is just to cater to them, make it as simple, as easy as possible. So to summarize what we've talked about, the 3 strategies that I would advocate that you pursue: one is to centralize your materials, second is to create an accountability system, and third is to cater to your business units. So those are the key items that I had to share with you today. I hope one of them has been beneficial to you. We also have some resources that I wanted to share, because I know that as you're starting down this process, it can be sometimes daunting to jump into a couple of these things. So there's a couple of resources that I wanted to share. So first is, if you're looking to do this on your own, so you're looking to build some of these parts or make some tweaks and changes, all I would say is we're here to help. You can feel free to give my team a call or drop us an email. We're happy to spend a few minutes with you, kind of walking through some of the key points, or if you're stuck on something, we're happy to give you a few minutes of our time to kind of walk you through it, tell you what other credit unions have done and how they've succeeded in it. So we're happy to do that. There's no cost, no obligation. Just give us a call and we're happy to help. The second commitment that we're willing to make to you is that, our platform Redboard solves these problems. And, when I say this, you're probably going to think, yeah, but like, I can't deal with that right now. Like, we got enough to deal with. Like, I don't have budget. I don't, not in the cards, right? And that's what we've heard other credit unions say. So to help the industry, we've teamed with Ongoing Operations. So Ongoing Operations is our infrastructure partner, to put together an offer to help the industry and help credit unions through this. And what we're offering is basically 120 days completely free. So there's no cost, there's no obligation for you at any point. The idea here is, we've been through this, we've been working on this for years. We know the difficulties and issues that you're facing right now, and we have something that can help. So if you just need help to get over that hump, if you just need help to get through the summer until things can get, closer back to normal, then we're happy to just give you our system. You can use it to get over the hump, and then afterwards, if you would like, you can go back to the old way you're doing it. Again, we're just trying to give back in some way. We've been involved with the industry a lot of years, and it's been good to us, and it's just our time to give back. So if there's something, if you think if there's a way we can help, please reach out to us. There's a URL down there. We're happy to help. One question I get on that sometimes is that, how hard is it to get up to speed on? I just share a couple of customer stories on that. One, we have a credit union in Southern California. They literally were able to go within 2 days. They signed up on a Tuesday, and by Thursday on that same week, they were fully operational and running their annual NCUA examination on the platform, and had already distributed it to all of their business units. We have another credit union, DCU, in the Boston area. They're fairly large. They have over 100 business unit employees on our platform, and they don't train anybody. And the reason they do that is because they don't have to. It's just intuitive to business units. So there's not any training required. So again, if you're looking for some help and you don't have time to put in for yourself, or you don't have time to create something yourself, give us a call. We're happy just to give it away.
So Brad, we had a question come in just a little bit more on Redboard. So is Redboard an audit management system? Does it have functionality for the annual planning process, risk assessment at the macro level, process audit level, risk assessment, scheduling, et cetera?
All right, great question. So Redboard does have some audit planning functionality. We've had some questions about risk assessments and risk planning. That's not something that we have on the platform. What our audit platform focuses on are the mechanics of actually running the audit with your staff. So from if you're running internal audits, executing all the internal audit steps, and all the reviews. If you're running external audits and examinations, things like managing document requests, managing findings, interacting with your business units, what have you. If you have more questions on that, I'm happy to show you some of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad.
All right. So with that, if there are any other questions, Amy, I'm all wrapped up. Again, if anyone would like some extra help, even if you want to do it, yourself and you just want to ask for our advice, our input, we're happy to provide that. If you'd like to take advantage of our free offer, you can reach out to us also. Again, we're just here to help. So Amy, if we have any other questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah, so if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the question sections. While you're doing that, I will pose one that came up as we were discussing. So we had the question, are the processes you mentioned more appropriate for smaller or larger credit unions? Does it matter?
Okay, that's a great question. So what we found from the customers who are on our platform and are using these same sort of techniques is that these same processes are applicable no matter what size of your organization is. The difference really comes into what you do with that time when after you execute these processes. So if you're smaller, you'll go through these processes a little quicker and save some time, and you'll end up reusing that time for all of the other things that you need in running your organization. Like most smaller credit unions, you're wearing multiple hats. And so if you save time and have this process run easier, you're probably going to invest that time somewhere else. For the larger credit unions, they tend to have more dedicated staff. So those folks are also saving a lot of time and also getting a lot of benefit. What they do with their time, though, is they turn around and put it back into their audit and compliance programs and invest it that way. So I guess in short, it doesn't matter how big you are, you're going to get some benefit from using processes like these and using these strategies. The difference comes into play is that after you've implemented them and you're seeing the benefit, what you do with it. That's where it changes based on size.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Any other questions from anyone in the group? Please feel free to go ahead and type those in. We had one more here of, we feel that we already have a pretty strong audit program in place. Why would we want to make any changes at this time, especially given the uncertainty?
Okay, so this is what our experience has been, and this is at least from the credit unions that we've worked with, is that the credit unions that tend to have the strongest audit programs also tend to put the most time and effort into their audit programs. And the reason they have the strongest audit programs is because they focus so much on them. And because of that, when you're able to implement some of these strategies, what we've seen is that those credit unions actually receive a higher ROI than others because they're able to save so much time and get more efficiencies out of them from all the time that they're spending to start with. So it's not that their audit program is not strong, it's that by making improvements, they're able to see a bigger return in time and efficiency savings than others might.
So any other questions from the group? I don't see any more coming in, but I will say if anyone has any more that come to them later, I went ahead and put Brad's contact info in the chat as well. I know he has it up on the slide in case it's easier just for folks to copy and paste, but I'm sure I can speak for Brad just to say that he's welcome to any questions you want to send his way.
All right, so thank you very much for your time today. Again, I hope that there's been at least one thing, one tidbit, one nugget that you've been able to take away that will help. And again, if there's anything we can help with afterwards, feel free to contact us. We're happy to help in this time of need.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks again, Brad. And for everyone who's on, we'll go ahead and we'll send a follow-up email that's got a link to the recording if anyone wants to review any of these things or things of that nature. So, and I'll make sure to include Brad's contact info there as well. But thank you guys very much for joining us on this Wednesday, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and stay healthy.